Honda handed over driving data from 97,000 cars and was paid $25,920 for it. That's 26 cents per car. Hyundai made the same kind of deal covering 1.7 million vehicles at roughly 61 cents each. Those figures come from the automaker's own answers to Senator Ron Wyden's office in 2024. The buyer was a company that sells risk data to insurers. The seller was the manufacturer using the modem built into the car you paid for, and the price you paid wasn't 26 cents. When the bill for all this finally showed up, it didn't arrive as a data breach or a scandal. It arrived as your car insurance quietly going up. A driver in Washington state named Ken Dahl found his commercial auto insurance jumped about 21%, and nobody could tell him why. He had never had an accident. He leased a 2021 Chevrolet Bolt, drove it to work, drove it home. When he pushed his broker for a reason, the answer was that his risk profile had changed, according to a report from a company called LexisNexis Risk Solutions. He requested his own file, the way you can request a credit report. What came back, as reported by Kashmir Hill in the New York Times in March of 2024, was 258 pages long. It listed 640 individual trips over 6 months, start times, end times, distances. Every instance the system counted as hard braking, sharp acceleration, or speeding. He had never signed up with LexisNexis. LexisNexis had never touched his car. General Motors had. Here is the part that changes how you should think about all of this. The report on Dahl's driving did not contain locations. It wasn't tracking where he went. It was scoring how he drove, and that turns out to be more commercially valuable because location is a privacy story and driving behavior is a pricing story. Insurers have wanted this for 20 years. That's the whole idea behind those little dongles you plug into your dashboard for a discount, and behind the phone apps that promise to lower your premium if you let them watch. The problem, from the industry side, was always adoption. Most people never opt in, and the ones who do are the careful drivers who know they'll score well, which makes the data useless for finding the risky drivers, because the risky drivers simply don't volunteer. Connected cars solved that. The modem is already in the vehicle, already powered, already reporting. There's no dongle to install and no app to remember. If the manufacturer sends the feed downstream, the insurance industry gets what it could never buy directly, which is behavioral data on ordinary drivers who never went looking for a discount. That data lands in a consumer report, which means a company you've never heard of is building a file that changes what you pay, and you find out it exists only if something goes wrong and you know to ask. So, how did anyone consent to this? Technically, through a feature called OnStar Smart Driver. It was pitched as a coaching tool. Get a score, see your habits, maybe earn a discount. Enrollment happened where almost every car decision happens, which is at the dealership, during the hour when you're signing a stack of documents you are not reading, and a salesperson is setting up your account on a tablet. Drivers told reporters they had no memory of enrolling at all. Several said they'd been signed up during delivery without a real explanation, and there was a structural reason for that. Dealership staff were working toward enrollment targets tied to connected services signups, so getting your account activated was part of somebody's job, not part of your decision. GM's position was that customers consented. The customer's position was that a screen they didn't read, tapped by someone else, on a feature described as a driving coach, is not consent to have 6 months of behavior sold into insurance underwriting. Both of those things can be true at once, and that gap is the entire business model. In March of 2024, after the reporting landed, GM said it had stopped sharing that data with LexisNexis and Verisk. It later shut Smart Driver down completely. Verisk closed its Automaker data program too. The pipeline that was worth 26 cents a car evaporated in about 3 weeks, which tells you something about how much anyone was defending it. Strip out the insurance story for a second and look at the hardware, because the hardware is the reason this keeps happening. A modern car runs somewhere between 50 and 150 computers, wired to sensors that were installed for perfectly good engineering reasons. Wheel speed for anti-lock braking, steering angle for stability control, seat weight sensors so the airbag doesn't fire into a child, cameras for lane keeping, microphones for hands-free calling, GPS for navigation and stolen vehicle recovery, tire pressure, seatbelt status, wiper activity, which is a decent proxy for weather, headlight state, which is a decent proxy for time of day. Industry estimates commonly put a connected vehicle's output at up to 25 gigabytes per hour. Treat that as a ballpark, not a measurement. The point isn't the exact number, it's that the data already exists as a byproduct of features you actually wanted. Nearly every new car also carries an event data recorder, the black box that captures the seconds before a crash, and federal regulators have moved to extend that recording window. Separately, when you plug in your phone, the infotainment system copies your contacts, your call log, and often your text messages so it can read them to you at a stoplight. None of that was built to spy on you. All of it was built. And then somebody in a strategy meeting asked what else it could be worth. In September of 2023, Mozilla's Privacy Not Included team reviewed the privacy practices of 25 car brands. All 25 failed. Not most. All of them. Mozilla called it the worst product category the project had ever reviewed, and that project has reviewed mental health apps and internet-connected sex toys. The specifics. 84% of the brands said they could share or sell your personal data. 76% said outright they could sell it. 56% said they'd share it with government or law enforcement in response to an informal request, meaning not a warrant, just an ask. 92% gave drivers little or no control over the data collected. 2 out of 25 gave drivers a real right to delete. Both were European brands, Renault and Dacia, and they offered it because European law required it. And then there were the categories in the policies themselves. Nissan's United States privacy notice listed sexual activity among the types of information it might collect. Kia's mentioned sex life. Both companies said they don't actually gather anything like that. Believe them if you want. The relevant fact is that a lawyer somewhere wrote the permission down anyway, because the cheapest thing in the world is a broad clause, and nobody in the chain is punished for asking for too much. If you're finding this useful, subscribing genuinely helps this channel keep digging into things nobody else itemizes. It's free, and it takes one tap. Because so far this has been about insurance, and insurance is the polite version. The next part is about who else can buy a car's location, what they pay for it, and the week researchers discovered they could pull up a full year of one vehicle's movements using nothing but a stranger's last name. The automaker doesn't want to negotiate one contract per buyer, so an entire layer grew in between, vehicle data marketplaces. The two loudest were Autonomo and Wayjo. Autonomo advertised connections to tens of millions of vehicles and claimed to process tens of billions of data points a day. Wayjo made similar claims and told investors it was building the standard exchange for connected car data. Neither company sold cars. Neither company had a relationship with you. They aggregated feeds from manufacturers and resold them to insurers, city planners, retailers, scouting store locations, fleet operators, and anyone else who could pay. Both businesses cratered. Wayjo collapsed into administration in 2023. Autonomo folded into another company the same year. Their failure is often cited as proof the market wasn't real. It proves something narrower. It proves those particular middlemen couldn't turn the data into enough revenue fast enough to satisfy public shareholders. The manufacturers, meanwhile, didn't need a middleman at all. They already own the modem, the account, and the terms of service. When the exchanges died, the pipes stayed exactly where they were, just with fewer companies standing between you and the buyer. In August of 2024, the Texas Attorney General sued General Motors, alleging the company had collected and sold driving data from more than 1.5 million Texas drivers and claiming the practice touched millions more vehicles nationwide. GM disputed the allegations. In January of 2025, the Federal Trade Commission announced an order against GM and OnStar that barred them for 5 years from disclosing geolocation and driver behavior data to consumer reporting agencies. 5 years, not forever. Read that as a fine with an expiration date. California's privacy regulator, which had opened a review of connected vehicles in 2023, later fined Honda's American arm several $100,000 over how it handled privacy requests. For a company that size, that's a rounding error, and everyone involved knows it. Then there's the quieter channel. More than half those brands told Mozilla they'd hand data to law enforcement without requiring a warrant. Just an informal request. Your car knows when it moved and where it stopped. Under most American privacy law, information you've already given to a company is much easier for the government to obtain than information sitting in your house. Your driveway is protected. The log of your car leaving the driveway is a business record. In January of 2025, security researchers Sam Curry and Shubham Shah published a flaw in Subaru's Starlink service. Through an administrative portal, they could locate and remotely control vehicles across the United States and Canada. They could unlock a car, start it, and they could pull up roughly a year of that vehicle's location history, precise enough to see individual stops, using little more than a target's last name and rough location. That wasn't a one-off. Curry's group had already found comparable holes across a long list of manufacturers, including a Kia dealer portal issue that allowed remote commands to be sent to a vehicle from its license plate. Each was patched after disclosure. Each was found by researchers who reported it responsibly rather than sold it. Here's the connection to everything else in this episode. The remote access exists because the data business needs it. A car that reports home continuously, tied to a cloud account with a customer service portal behind it, is a car that can be reached from the outside. You cannot build the monetization layer without building the attack surface. And the attack surface is not something you were ever asked to accept. It came bundled with a feature you didn't request, sold to a buyer you never met. Sell your car, and the data does not leave with you. Infotainment systems retain paired phone data, contact lists, call history, saved destinations, garage door codes, and home addresses. Unless the previous owner performed a factory reset, and almost nobody does, that stays in the dashboard for whoever buys it next. It runs the other direction too. There are documented cases of previous owners keeping access to a car's app long after the sale, still able to see its location and, in some cases, still able to unlock it or start it remotely, because the sale transferred the title and the keys but never touched the cloud account. Rental cars are worse because you pair your phone by reflex at the airport and hand the vehicle back an hour later without a thought. Fleets are supposed to wipe them. Audits by vehicle privacy researchers have repeatedly found they don't. So the file on you isn't just the car you own. It's every car you paired with and every stranger who drove one of them after you. You might expect all this pressure to end the practice. It won't, because of what automakers have promised their investors. Selling a car is a one-time transaction on a thin margin in a brutally cyclical business. Software and services are recurring revenue at high margin, and Wall Street pays several times more for $1 of subscription revenue than $1 of manufacturing revenue. GM has told investors it's targeting $20 to $25 billion a year from software and services by 2030. Every major manufacturer has a version of that slide. That's why GM decided to drop Apple CarPlay and Android Auto from its electric vehicles. When your phone runs the dashboard, Apple and Google own the screen, the navigation destinations, and the relationship. The company said it was about integration. It's also, unavoidably, about who holds the data. And that's why Ford filed a patent application, published in 2023, describing a system for delivering advertisements inside the vehicle, targeted using where the driver was going and potentially informed by audio picked up in the cabin. Ford noted correctly that patents aren't product plans, but nobody drafts and pays for that patent unless somebody in the building has been thinking about it seriously. Add it up. Your car generates data as a side effect of safety features you'd never give up. The manufacturer owns the connection. The consent was collected in a moment engineered so you wouldn't notice. The buyer sits 3 companies away from you. And the price paid for 1 year of one person's driving was, in Honda's case, 26 cents. You can push back, partly. You can opt out of connected services in your account settings, though on many vehicles that also kills features you paid for. You can request your file from the consumer reporting agencies, and if a report has changed your premium, you have the right to see it and dispute it. You can factory reset the infotainment before selling, and delete the paired phone. You can decline data sharing at the dealership out loud, and watch how quickly the tablet gets turned away from you. What you cannot do is negotiate. That's the actual finding here. Not that the data has value, but that the value was set entirely on one side of the table. 26 cents was never an offer. It was a receipt, printed after the fact for something already taken. The same trick runs on your food. A date set by the company that profits when you throw it out, and almost no federal rule behind it. That's the episode right before this one. Watch it next. The expiration date nobody regulates.